tonight, we will journey together through ancient wisdom and gentle stories. We will explore what it truly means to find peace. Not the peace that comes from escaping our lives, but the peace that arises when we finally stop struggling against them. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. For thousands of years, these teachings have helped people just like you find rest for their weary minds. Whether they were monks in mountain monasteries or ordinary people living ordinary lives, the wisdom we explore tonight does not belong to any special place or time. It belongs to anyone willing to listen. The Buddha said that peace comes from within, and that we should not seek it without. There is nothing you need to do right now except listen. Nothing you need to figure out or remember. We are in no hurry here. So settle in. Let the world outside grow quiet. And when you are ready, let's begin our journey together. What would it feel like to know exactly where you are? Not in the sense of a map or an address, but in a deeper way. To know your place in this moment, in this breath, in this life. To rest in the simple certainty of being here without needing to be anywhere else. Most of us spend our days reaching towards some other moment. We lean into the future, planning and hoping and worrying about what has not yet arrived. Or we drift back into the past, replaying memories, wishing we had done things differently, carrying old sorrows like stones in our pockets. We are rarely just here, in this breath, in this body, in this room. And yet, here is the only place we ever actually are. The Buddha spoke often about this quality of presence. He called it mindfulness, which simply means remembering to be awake to this moment. Not lost in thought, not carried away by stories about yesterday or tomorrow. Just here, aware, alive to what is actually happening. This sounds simple, and in a way it is. But simple does not always mean easy. There is an image that captures something essential about the human journey. It is the image of being in the middle of a vast ocean, far from any shore. Perhaps you have felt this way at certain times in your life. You know that you left land somewhere behind you. You trust that there must be land ahead, somewhere beyond the horizon. But right now, surrounded by nothing but water and sky, it can be difficult to know exactly where you are. This feeling visits us during times of change. When something familiar has ended but something new has not yet begun. When we are between chapters of our lives, no longer who we were but not yet who we are becoming. It can feel unsettling, this not knowing. The mind wants certainty. It wants a destination. It wants to arrive. But what if arrival is not the point? What if the middle of the ocean is not a problem to be solved but simply a place to be? What if the not knowing is not a failure but an invitation? An invitation to let go of the shore we have left behind. An invitation to stop straining toward a shore we cannot yet see. An invitation to simply be here, now, floating in the vast and gentle mystery of existence. There is a teaching in the Zen tradition that points to this directly. When students would come to the old masters with complicated questions about enlightenment or the meaning of life, the masters would sometimes offer the simplest possible answer. Where are you? Here. When is it? Now. This is where peace is found. Not in some other place. Not in some other time. But here, in the only moment that actually exists. Let us explore a story about a young traveler who learned this teaching in a surprising way. Many years ago, in a distant land where ancient forests stretch for miles beneath a canopy of green, There was a monastery hidden among the trees. It was a quiet place, simple and remote, where those who sought wisdom could come to study with a teacher who was known for his gentle heart and clear seeing. A young man arrived at this monastery after a long journey. He had heard stories about the old teacher and had traveled far to sit at his feet and learn. He imagined peaceful days of meditation beneath the trees. He imagined his restless mind finally growing still. But when he arrived, things were different than he had pictured. The monastery was in a season of change. New dwellings were being built to house the growing number of students, and each morning brought the sounds of gentle activity. Workers moved about with their tools. There was the soft rhythm of building, the murmur of voices, the ordinary sounds of life continuing. The young man found this difficult. He sat on his cushion and tried to meditate, but his mind kept reaching toward the sounds, commenting on them, wishing them away. Days passed, and his frustration grew. He felt that something was wrong. Surely meditation required perfect quiet. Surely he could not find peace with all this activity around him. Finally, feeling defeated, he went to see the old teacher. The teacher lived in the simplest dwelling of all, a small room with a mat on the floor and a window that looked out into the forest. When the young man arrived, the teacher was sitting peacefully, his eyes soft, his presence calm and welcoming. "Please," the teacher said, gesturing to a cushion, "sit with me. Tell me what brings you here today." The young man sat down and sighed. "I am struggling," he said. "I came here to find peace, to learn to meditate, to quiet my mind, but there is so much happening around me. The sounds, the activity. Every time I try to settle, something distracts me. I feel like I cannot meditate at all." The teacher listened with full attention, nodding gently. "And what do you think meditation should feel like?" he asked. "Quiet," the young man said. "Still, peaceful, a mind like a calm lake, without any ripples." "I see," the teacher said. "And when your mind is not like a calm lake, when there are ripples, what do you do?" "I try to make them stop. I try to push away the distractions. I try to force my mind to be still." "And does this work?" The young man laughed softly. "No, it seems to make things worse." "Of course it does," the teacher said, his voice warm. "You are fighting against what is here. You are at war with this moment. And this moment always wins." He paused, letting the words settle. "Tell me," he continued, "right now, as you sit here with me, what do you hear?" The young man listened. In the distance, there was the soft sound of activity. Closer, there was birdsong, the whisper of wind in the leaves. "I hear the sounds of the monastery," he said. "The building, the birds, the wind." "Yes," the teacher said. "And are these sounds harming you?" The young man considered this. "No, not really. They are just sounds." "Just sounds," the teacher repeated. "Just vibrations in the air. Just the world being alive. And yet you have turned them into enemies. You have decided that they should not be here, that they are obstacles to your peace. But what if they are not obstacles at all? What if they are simply part of this moment, like the cushion beneath you, like the breath in your body? But how can I meditate with all this noise?" The teacher smiled gently. "Why not meditate on the noise?" The young man was quiet. He had not expected this. "The noise is what is here," the teacher continued. Your frustration is what is here. Your wish for things to be different is what is here. These are not obstacles to meditation. These are meditation. When you turn toward what is here, when you meet it with openness instead of resistance, that is the practice. That is the path. But I thought meditation was about finding peace. It is, the teacher said. But peace is not found by changing what is here. Peace is found by changing how you meet what is here. When you stop fighting, when you lay down your weapons, when you simply allow this moment to be as it is, peace arises naturally. It was here all along, beneath your struggle. The young man considered this carefully. So you are saying that I should just accept everything? That I should not wish for quiet? I am saying that wishing for quiet will not bring you quiet, the teacher replied. It will only bring you more wishing, more reaching, more distance from this moment. But when you truly accept what is here, something remarkable happens. The noise is still noise, but it no longer troubles you. It becomes simply another texture of this moment, like the color of the sky or the feel of the air on your skin. And this is possible, even for someone like me, whose mind is so restless. The teacher's eyes crinkled with warmth. Especially for someone like you. The restless ones often become the most peaceful because they know so intimately what restlessness feels like. They have nowhere left to run, and so they finally learn to sit down. The young man looked out the window at the trees moving gently in the breeze. I have been running for a long time, he said softly. Yes, the teacher said. I can see that. And you must be very tired. I am. Then rest. Not later. Not when conditions are perfect. Now. Rest now, in the middle of your running. That is the practice. That is the only practice there has ever been. The young man sat with this. Outside, the sounds continued. The soft rhythm of the monastery. The birds. The wind. But something had shifted in him. It seems too simple, he said quietly. Simple, yes, the teacher said, but not always easy. We have spent our whole lives learning to resist, to fight, to wish things were different. Unlearning this takes patience. It takes gentleness. It takes great kindness toward yourself. Where do I begin? You have already begun, the teacher said. You began the moment you noticed your struggle. You began the moment you came here to speak honestly about your difficulty. Now you simply continue. One breath at a time. One moment at a time. Turning toward what is here instead of away from it. He placed his hand over his heart. The peace you are seeking is closer than you know. It is not hidden in some faraway place or some future time. It is here, in this moment, beneath all your ideas about how things should be. It has always been here. You have only to stop running long enough to notice. This teaching points to something essential about the nature of peace. We often believe that peace depends on circumstances. If only things were quieter, we think. If only life were easier. If only this problem would resolve or that difficulty would pass. Then we could rest. Then we could be at peace. But the Buddha saw clearly that this is not how peace works. Peace is not a reward we receive when conditions are finally right. Peace is a way of being with conditions as they are. It is available now, in this moment, regardless of what is happening around us or within us. This does not mean that we must enjoy every difficulty. It does not mean that we pretend things are other than they are. The sounds are still sounds. The challenges are still challenges. But when we stop adding the weight of resistance to the weight of circumstance, something shifts. The burden becomes lighter, sometimes much lighter. There is an ancient teaching about two arrows. When something difficult happens, we are struck by the first arrow, which is the difficulty itself. This is often unavoidable. Life brings challenges. That is simply how life is. But then we shoot ourselves with a second arrow, which is all the ways we make it worse. Our thoughts about the difficulty, our judgments, our resistance, our insistence that this should not be happening. The first arrow may be unavoidable, but the second arrow is optional. Consider how often we add to our own burdens. Something happens that we did not want. Perhaps there is noise when we wished for quiet. Perhaps there is change when we wished for stability. Perhaps there is uncertainty when we wished for clarity. That is the first arrow. But then the mind begins its commentary. This should not be happening. Why is this happening to me? This is ruining everything. I cannot bear this. That is the second arrow. And often, the second arrow hurts far more than the first. We cannot always choose what happens to us. But we can learn, slowly and gently, to stop shooting ourselves with that second arrow. We can learn to meet difficulty with openness rather than resistance. We can learn to be at peace even when peace seems far away. This is not about becoming passive or pretending that everything is fine when it is not. It is about conserving our energy for what truly matters. It is about not making hard things harder than they need to be. It is about trusting that we can meet this moment, whatever it contains, without adding unnecessary suffering to the mix. Let us return to our image of the ocean. There is a poem about a small duck floating on vast waters, far from any shore. The poem describes how the duck rests in the swells, how it moves with the great rhythm of the sea rather than fighting against it. The duck does not know how large the ocean is, and neither do we. But the duck has discovered something important. It has learned to sit down in the midst of things, to give itself to what is here, to rest in the immediate moment as if it were infinite, which it is. The duck does not struggle against the waves. It does not exhaust itself trying to reach a distant shore. It simply floats, rising and falling with each swell, completely at ease in the middle of something vast. There is a kind of wisdom in this that goes beyond what words can capture. The duck has made peace with the ocean by becoming part of it. This is what the poem calls the secret of true rest. Not escaping to somewhere else, not waiting for conditions to improve, but settling into this moment, this breath, this place, exactly as it is, trusting that we are held by something larger than our understanding, trusting that we belong here, in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of our lives. We spend so much energy trying to get somewhere, trying to arrive, trying to reach solid ground. But what if this moment, right here, is the solid ground we have been seeking? What if the peace we long for is not at the end of the journey but woven into every step along the way? The duck does not need to see the shore to be at peace. It does not need to understand the tides. It simply floats, resting in the vast embrace of the sea. And we can learn to do the same. Let us pause for a moment. Take a slow, deep breath. And when you are ready, we will continue together. man once traveled a great distance to ask the Buddha a question. He had been carrying this question for years. It kept him awake at night. It followed him through his days. He had asked teachers and scholars and wise elders, but none of their answers had satisfied him. And so when he heard that the Buddha was teaching in a grove not far from his village, he set out immediately. He found the Buddha sitting beneath a tree, surrounded by students. The man waited patiently until there was an opening, and then he stepped forward. "I have come a long way to ask you something," he said. "Something important. I need to know what happens when we die." The grove grew quiet. This was indeed an important question, the question that haunts every human heart. What happens when this life ends? Is there something after? Do we continue in some form, or do we simply cease to be? The Buddha looked at the man with kind eyes. "Why do you want to know this?" he asked. "Because I need to know how to live," the man said. "If I knew what happens at the end, I would know how to spend my days." Everything depends on the answer. The Buddha nodded slowly, as if considering this carefully. "Let me ask you something," he said. "Suppose I told you that there are many lives, that when this body falls away, something continues and you are born again into a new form. That this has happened countless times before and will happen countless times again. If this were true, how would you want to live?" The man thought about this. "I would want to be kind," he said, "because kindness feels right in my bones, and it would plant good seeds for whatever comes next. I would want to be generous, because hoarding things seems foolish if I cannot take them with me anyway. And I would want to pay attention, to really be present, because if there are lessons to learn here, I would want to learn them well." "Good," the Buddha said. "Now suppose I told you the opposite, that there is only this one life, that when it ends completely, and there is nothing after. No continuation, no rebirth, just this one precious chance, and then silence. If this were true, how would you want to live?" The man considered this too. He had expected the Buddha to simply answer his question, not to turn it into an exploration. But he found himself genuinely curious about his own response. "I would still want to be kind," he said slowly. "Perhaps even more so. Because if I only get to see these people once, I would want to truly meet them, to share my heart with them while I have the chance. I would still want to be generous, because if I cannot take anything with me, I might as well enjoy the giving while I am here. Holding on tightly would seem even more foolish. And I would want to pay attention even more than before, because if this is the only dance, I would not want to miss a single step." The Buddha smiled. "Just so," he said. "Do you see what has happened? Whether there are many lives or only one, the way to live is the same. Kindness, generosity, attention. These do not depend on knowing what comes after. They are their own reward, complete in themselves. They need no future to justify them." The man stood quietly, taking this in. He had traveled so far to get an answer about death. Instead, he had received an answer about life, and he realized that this was what he had truly needed all along. This story points to something important. We often believe that we need to understand life before we can live it well. We want to know the big answers. We want the map before we begin the journey. We want certainty before we are willing to commit. But the Buddha suggested something different. He suggested that the way to live does not depend on having the answers. The questions may remain unanswered, perhaps forever. And still, we can live with kindness. Still, we can open our hearts. Still, we can pay attention to this extraordinary gift of being alive. There is a freedom in this. We do not have to wait until we have figured everything out. We do not have to solve the great mysteries before we can begin. We can begin now, today, this moment, with whatever understanding we have. And perhaps this is the only way to truly learn. Not by thinking our way to wisdom, but by living our way there. A wise teacher once said, "Insights are cheap," she said. We have had many insights. We have understood things deeply, seen through illusions, glimpsed the truth. But has it changed how we live? That is the real question. She was pointing to a gap that many of us know well. The gap between understanding and living. We can read 100 books about kindness without becoming kind. We can understand the importance of presence without actually being present. We can have beautiful insights during meditation and then lose them entirely the moment we return to daily life. How many times have we seen something clearly, only to forget it by the next morning? How many moments of understanding have faded into memory while our habits continued unchanged? There is a story about a student who came to a teacher, excited about an insight he had experienced during meditation. "I saw it," he said. "I finally understood. Everything is connected. There is no separation. It was so clear, so obvious. I do not know how I missed it before." The teacher listened patiently. "And then what happened?" she asked. "What do you mean? After this great insight, what did you do? How did you treat your family? How did you speak to the person who annoyed you? How did you respond when things did not go your way?" The student was quiet. He realized that his insight, however genuine, had not yet reached his daily life. It remained a peak experience, a memory, something that had happened to him rather than something that had changed him. "Insights are like seeds," the teacher said gently. "They are precious, but they are not yet flowers. They need to be planted in the soil of daily life. They need to be watered with practice, with attention, with the willingness to live differently. Otherwise, they remain just seeds, full of potential but never blooming." The Buddha was not interested in giving people ideas to think about. He was interested in transformation, in how we actually move through our days, in whether our understanding reaches all the way down into our hands and feet, into our words and actions, into the way we treat the person standing in front of us. This is why he answered the man's question the way he did. The man wanted to know what happens after death. The Buddha redirected him to what happens before death, to this life, to today, to the choices we make right now, because that is where it matters. That is where understanding becomes real. There is a phrase that captures something essential about the spiritual life. The mystery of life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced. We are so trained to approach everything as a problem. We gather information. We analyze. We look for solutions. This works well for many things. If the roof leaks, we can study the problem and fix it. If we want to learn a new skill, we can break it down into steps and practice. But life itself is not this kind of problem. The big questions, why are we here? What does it mean? What happens when it ends? These are not puzzles that yield to analysis. They are mysteries that we live inside of. And there is a difference between solving a problem and inhabiting a mystery. When we try to solve life, we stand outside of it, looking in, trying to figure it out. We become observers rather than participants. We miss the living of it while we are busy analyzing it. But when we inhabit the mystery, we are inside it. We are part of it. We do not need to understand the whole ocean to swim in it. We do not need to comprehend the vastness to feel the water on our skin. The Buddha's answer to the man was an invitation to stop trying to solve life and start living it. To stop waiting for certainty and start moving with trust. To let the questions remain questions and discover that we can live beautifully even so. There is a story about two monks walking together on a journey. They had set out at dawn and had been traveling for most of the morning when they came to a river. The water was swollen from recent rains, moving fast and brown with mud. Normally the crossing would have been easy, but today it looked dangerous. At the edge of the river stood a young woman, looking at the water with obvious fear. She needed to cross but was afraid to attempt it alone. The current was too strong, the water too deep. The older monk, without hesitation or discussion, walked over to her. He picked her up in his arms and waded into the river. The younger monk watched, astonished, as his companion carried the woman through the rushing water and set her safely down on the far bank. She thanked him, and then the two monks continued on their way. For hours they walked in silence. The younger monk was clearly agitated, turning something over in his mind, wanting to speak but holding back. Finally, as the sun began to lower in the sky, he could contain himself no longer. "How could you do that?" he burst out. "We are monks. We have taken vows. We are not supposed to touch women. We are not supposed to have any physical contact at all. And yet you picked her up and carried her in your arms. I do not understand how you could do such a thing." The older monk looked at him with genuine surprise. "I set her down at the river bank," he said gently. "That was hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This little story has many layers, but one of them speaks to what we are exploring here. The younger monk was caught in ideas about how things should be. He had rules in his mind, categories of right and wrong, a rigid framework for understanding the world. When reality did not fit his categories, he could not let it go. He carried the incident for hours, turning it over, judging it, unable to move on. His mind was so busy with concepts that he missed the simple human moment that had occurred. The older monk responded to what was actually in front of him. A person needed help. He helped. Then he continued walking. He did not need to analyze or justify or worry about whether he had violated some rule. He simply met the moment with kindness and moved on. His vows were alive in him, not as rigid rules but as a living commitment to compassion. This is what it looks like to live in the unknown, to respond to what is here rather than getting lost in ideas about what should be, to trust our own hearts rather than waiting for some external authority to tell us what is right. The Buddha often taught through questions rather than answers. When students came to him with complicated philosophical puzzles, he would sometimes respond with silence. Or he would turn the question around, asking what the student really wanted to know, what was driving their curiosity, what they hoped the answer would give them. He understood that many of our questions are not really requests for information. They are ways of avoiding the present moment. They are attempts to escape the uncertainty of being alive by pinning everything down with concepts and conclusions. But life cannot be pinned down. It is too alive for that. It moves and changes and surprises us. Our neatest theories are always being exceeded by what actually happens. A Zen master was once asked, "What is the meaning of life?" He held up a flower. The student was confused. "I do not understand. What does the flower have to do with meaning?" The master said, "If you need me to explain it, you have already missed it." The flower was not a symbol for something else. It was not a puzzle to be decoded. It was just a flower, alive and present, offering itself to whoever had eyes to see. The meaning of life is not something separate from life. It is life itself, showing up moment after moment, invitation after invitation. Perhaps the deepest answer to any question about how to live is simply pay attention. Pay attention to this breath, to this body, to the person in front of you, to the light coming through the window, the sounds in the room, the feeling of your feet on the ground. When we pay attention, we do not need to figure out the meaning. The meaning reveals itself. It is woven into the fabric of each moment, available to anyone who slows down enough to notice. The Buddha's advice to the man who asked about death was really advice about attention. Be kind, which means paying attention to others and their needs. Be generous, which means paying attention to what we have and how we might share it. Be present, which means paying attention to this moment rather than some imagined future. Attention is the thread that runs through all of it. It is what transforms philosophy into practice, understanding into living. We will not figure everything out. This is worth saying plainly. We will not solve the mystery of existence. We will not answer all our questions. We will not reach a point where everything is clear and certain and understood. And this is not a failure. This is simply what it means to be human. We are small creatures in a vast universe, living for a brief moment in an incomprehensibly long story. Our not knowing is appropriate. Our humility is well placed. But within this not knowing, we can still live with great beauty. We can still love fiercely. We can still pay attention. We can still choose kindness over cruelty, generosity over hoarding, presence over absence. The man who asked the Buddha about death discovered something important that day. He discovered that he did not need the answer he thought he needed. The way to live was already clear, written in his own heart, available the moment he stopped looking elsewhere for permission to begin. We too have this wisdom written in our hearts. We know how to live. We know what matters. We know that kindness is better than cruelty, that presence is better than absence, that love is better than fear. We do not need anyone to tell us this. We only need to listen to what we already know. And then, with whatever time we have, in whatever circumstances we find ourselves, we can begin to live it. Not perfectly, not with all the answers, but sincerely, wholeheartedly, one moment at a time. This is the Buddha's answer about living. This is what all the teachings point toward. Not understanding life, but living it. Not solving the mystery, but dancing with it. Not waiting for certainty, but trusting the wisdom of our own hearts. Let yourself rest in this for a moment, and when you are ready, we will continue together. There are places in this world where stillness has gathered over centuries. You can feel it when you enter such a place. Something in you recognizes it before your mind has words for what is happening. Your breathing slows. Your shoulders soften. The endless commentary of the mind grows quiet, as if it senses that here, in this place, it can finally rest. A traveler once described visiting such a place. He was a monk who had spent his whole life seeking wisdom. He had read many books and studied with teachers across distant lands. His mind was sharp and his questions were endless. What is the meaning of this life? What lies beyond what we can see? How do we find peace when the world is so full of change? These questions followed him everywhere. They kept him awake at night. They drove him from one teaching to the next, always searching, never quite arriving. Then he heard about an ancient monastery carved into a cliff face, far away in a land he had never visited. The monastery was said to be almost 2,000 years old. Within its grounds stood enormous figures carved directly into the living rock, figures that pilgrims had been visiting since before anyone could remember. Something about this called to him, and so he made the long journey. He arrived on a quiet morning when mist still hung in the air. The grounds were simpler than he had imagined. Green grass stretched beneath ancient trees, whose branches wove together overhead like gentle hands clasping. A worn stone path led from the entrance toward the trees, and a small sign asked visitors to remove their shoes before continuing. The traveler slipped off his sandals and placed them where countless others had rested before. Then he stepped onto the grass. It was cool and damp beneath his bare feet. He could feel each blade pressing softly against his skin. The path wound through the trees, and with each step, the world he had left behind seemed to grow more distant. His questions, those endless questions that had driven him across oceans and mountains, began to fade. Not answered, just quieter, as if they too sensed that something was different here. The trees opened, and he saw the cliff. It rose before him like a great wave frozen in stone, pale and weathered and immense. And carved into its face were figures so large that at first his eyes could not make sense of them. He stopped walking. He stood completely still, and he looked. The largest figure lay along the base of the cliff, reclining as if resting after a long journey. It stretched perhaps 100 feet from head to toe. The ancient craftsman had carved it with such care that the stone robes seemed to flow like water. The limbs seemed soft and relaxed. The face seemed almost alive. One hand supported the great head. The other rested gently along the body. There was no tension anywhere in that vast form. Only ease. Only rest. Above this reclining figure sat two more, cross-legged in meditation, their hands resting in their laps, their faces turned slightly downward, with an expression the traveler had never seen before. He stood there for a long time looking at those faces. They were smiling, but it was not a smile he could easily name. It held no excitement, no amusement, no particular happiness about anything in particular. And yet it was not empty or distant either. The smile seemed to contain something vast, something that had made room for everything and pushed nothing away. Looking at those faces, the traveler felt something he had not expected. He felt seen, not judged, not evaluated, not measured against some standard. Just seen, as if those ancient eyes, carved from stone so long ago, could somehow perceive him standing there with all his questions and doubts and weariness. And in being seen, he felt accepted, just as he was, without needing to be different, without needing to have figured anything out. The traveler felt his questions rising again, as they always did. What did the smile mean? What had those ancient carvers understood? What was the secret held in that peaceful expression? But as he stood there, something strange began to happen. The questions arose, and then they simply faded. They did not demand answers. They did not create the usual restlessness in his chest. They simply appeared and dissolved, like ripples on still water. He realized that the faces were not answering his questions. They were doing something else entirely. They were showing him that perhaps the questions did not need to be answered at all. There is a kind of peace that comes from finding answers. We ask a question, we search for understanding, and when the answer arrives, we feel relief. The tension dissolves. We can move on. But there is another kind of peace, deeper and more mysterious. It is the peace that comes from no longer needing answers, from resting in the questions themselves, from discovering that the mind can be at ease even when it does not know, even when it cannot figure things out, even when the mystery remains. The great stone faces seem to embody this second kind of peace. They did not explain anything. They did not offer teachings or philosophies or systems of thought. They simply sat there, century after century, holding that gentle smile that questioned nothing and rejected nothing. A writer who visited this same place many years later described the faces in words that have been shared ever since. He called them the most compelling works of art he had ever encountered. He spoke of their extraordinary silence, their great smiles that were huge and yet subtle, filled with every possibility. What struck him most was what the faces were not doing. They were not trying to prove anything. They were not arguing for one view against another. They were not establishing some position or defending some idea. They had simply seen through every question without needing to discredit anyone or anything. And in that seeing through, they had found a peace that nothing could disturb. We carry so many questions through our lives. Some of them are practical. How will I pay for this? What should I do about that situation? Where should I go next? These questions have their place. They help us navigate the daily business of being alive. But beneath these practical questions lie deeper ones. Questions about meaning and purpose. Questions about who we really are. Questions about what happens when this life ends and whether any of it matters in the end. These deeper questions can become a kind of burden. We feel that we should know the answers, that everyone else has figured things out, that there is something wrong with us for still wondering. We search and search, and each answer we find seems to open new questions, and the searching never ends. The Buddha spoke about this endless searching. He compared it to a person who has been struck by an arrow and refuses to let anyone remove it until he knows everything about where the arrow came from, who made it, what kind of wood was used, what feathers fletched it. Meanwhile, the person suffers. The wound deepens. The questions, however interesting, do not help. What if we could set down our questions, not because we have answered them, but because we have discovered that we do not need to answer them in order to be at peace? This is what the great stone faces seem to suggest. They have let go of the need to know. They have stopped grasping at understanding. And in that letting go, they have found something that all the answers in the world could never provide. The traveler stood before the carvings until the sun had moved across the sky and the shadows had shifted along the cliff face. He noticed that other visitors came and went. Some stayed only a few minutes, taking in the sight, perhaps capturing it in their memories, then moving on. Others lingered, sitting on the grass, gazing up at those ancient faces as if waiting for something. An old woman sat nearby, her eyes closed, her face as peaceful as the stone figures above. The traveler watched her for a moment, curious. After some time, she opened her eyes and noticed him looking. "First visit?" she asked. He nodded. "I have traveled a long way to see this place." "Many do," she said. "What brought you?" He considered the question. "I am not sure anymore. I thought I was looking for answers. I have spent my whole life looking for answers. And have you found any?" "Many. But they never seem to be enough. Each one leads to more questions." The old woman smiled, and something in her smile reminded him of the great faces above them. "Perhaps that is the answer," she said. "What do you mean?" "Perhaps the answer is that there is no final answer. Perhaps peace is not found at the end of the search, but in the searching itself. Or even better, in the moment when we realize we can stop searching and simply be." She gestured toward the reclining figure carved into the cliff. "Look at that face. Has it figured everything out? Does it know all the secrets of the universe?" The traveler looked. The face held its gentle smile, vast and subtle and impossibly serene. "I do not think so," he said slowly. "It does not look like someone who knows everything. It looks like someone who has stopped needing to know." "Yes," the old woman said. "That is what I see too. Not the peace of having all the answers. The peace of no longer being troubled by the questions." The traveler sat down on the grass beside her. For a while, neither of them spoke. They simply sat together, looking up at the great stone faces as the light shifted and the shadows lengthened. "I have wasted so much time," the traveler said finally. "So many years chasing answers that were never going to satisfy me." The old woman shook her head gently. "Nothing is wasted. Every step of searching brought you here. Every question you asked taught you something, even if only that questions do not bring peace. How else would you have learned? But I could have been at peace all along. If only I had known." "Could you? Can anyone find peace before they are ready? Before they have exhausted the other paths?" She smiled again. "Be gentle with yourself. You arrived exactly when you were meant to arrive. Not a moment too soon. Not a moment too late." The traveler felt something loosen in his chest. A knot he had carried so long he had forgotten it was there. "What do I do now?" he asked. "Now? Now you do whatever you do. You eat when you are hungry. You sleep when you are tired. You walk when walking is needed. You sit when sitting is needed. The same as before. But something has changed. Yes, something has changed. And nothing has changed. Both are true." She laughed softly, a sound like wind through leaves. "That is the wonderful thing. Life goes on just as it always did. But you are no longer fighting it. You are no longer demanding that it be something other than what it is. And that makes all the difference." There is a freedom in not knowing. This may sound strange to us. We live in a world that prizes knowledge, that rewards expertise, that suggests we should have opinions about everything and certainty about most things. To admit that we do not know can feel like failure. But the deepest teachers have always pointed toward a different kind of wisdom. Not the wisdom of accumulating facts and answers, but the wisdom of resting in the mystery, of being comfortable with uncertainty, of holding our questions lightly like birds that might fly away at any moment. The Zen tradition calls this don't know mind. It is the mind that has stopped pretending to have everything figured out. The mind that meets each moment fresh, without the weight of all its conclusions and opinions. The mind that is free precisely because it is not defending any position. A teacher once said that in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few. The beginner looks at the world with wonder because everything is new. The expert has seen it all before and knows what to expect. But which one is more alive? Which one is more free? The great stone faces carry something of this beginner's quality, even though they are ancient beyond measure. They do not look tired or burdened by all they have witnessed. They look fresh, open, ready to meet whatever comes with that same gentle, accepting smile. As the afternoon light grew golden and soft, the traveler finally rose to leave. He walked slowly back through the trees, feeling the grass beneath his feet, hearing the birds singing their evening songs. Something had shifted in him, though he could not say exactly what. His questions had not been answered. If anything, he had more questions now than before. But the questions no longer felt heavy. They no longer drove him forward with that desperate urgency he had carried for so long. He realized that he had been seeking peace in the wrong place. He had been seeking it in answers, in understanding, in finally figuring things out. But the peace he had glimpsed in those ancient faces had nothing to do with figuring things out. It was the peace of acceptance, of surrender, of letting the mystery be a mystery and discovering that this was not only bearable but beautiful. At the edge of the grounds, he retrieved his sandals and slipped them back on. The stone path led away from the monastery, back toward the world of questions and answers, of problems and solutions, of endless seeking. But he walked differently now, more slowly, more gently, as if he had all the time in the world, as if there was nowhere he needed to arrive. We do not need to visit an ancient monastery to touch this kind of peace. The great stone faces point towards something that is always available, something that lives within us as surely as it lives in carved stone. It is the capacity to rest in not knowing, to let our questions breathe, to stop demanding that life make sense and instead allow ourselves to be held by the mystery. This does not mean we stop learning or growing or exploring. It does not mean we become passive or indifferent. It simply means we loosen our grip. We stop clenching so tightly around our need to understand. And in that loosening, something opens. Space appears where before there was only pressure. Ease arrives where before there was only strain. The questions may remain. They may even multiply, but they no longer imprison us. They become companions on the journey rather than taskmasters driving us forward. This is the peace that passes understanding, not because it is complicated or hidden, but because it exists beyond the reach of the thinking mind. The mind wants to grasp it, to figure it out, to turn it into knowledge. But this peace cannot be grasped. It can only be rested in, like a bird resting on a branch, like a leaf resting on still water, like a traveler standing before ancient stone faces, finally allowing himself to simply be. The faces themselves have been resting for nearly 2,000 years. They have watched countless seekers come and go. They have held their gentle smile through wars and famines, through empires rising and falling, through generations being born and passing away. And still they rest. Still they smile. Still they offer the same wordless teaching to anyone who pauses long enough to receive it. Let us pause here for a moment. Let your breath come and go without effort. And when you are ready, we will continue together. Picture a small boat on a wide lake. The morning began calm. The water was glass, reflecting the sky so perfectly that it was hard to tell where one ended and the other began. The travelers set out with light hearts, expecting an easy crossing. The far shore was visible in the distance, hazy but clear enough to guide them. Then the weather changed. It happens quickly on large bodies of water. One moment the air is still. The next, a wind rises from nowhere, pushing clouds across the sky, turning the glassy surface into something rougher, more alive. The small waves become larger waves. The boat begins to rock. What felt safe and manageable just moments ago now feels uncertain, precarious. The travelers looked at one another. They had seen weather change before, but there was something different about this storm. It came on so fast. The clouds piled up on top of each other, dark and heavy. The wind did not blow steadily but in gusts, pushing the boat sideways, making it hard to hold course. This is a story that has been told in many traditions, in many lands, across many centuries. The details change, but the heart of it remains the same. A group of travelers caught in a sudden storm. Fear rising as the waves grow. The desperate effort to keep the boat steady, to bail water, to row harder, to do something, anything, to survive. And somewhere in the boat, one figure who does not share the panic. One person who remains at rest even as everything pitches and rolls around them. How is this possible? What do they know that the others have forgotten? There is a particular kind of fear that arises when we feel out of control. It is different from the fear of a specific threat, like a snake on the path or a loud noise in the night. Those fears are sharp and focused. They tell us exactly what to pay attention to, and they fade once the threat has passed. But the fear of chaos, of things falling apart, of forces larger than ourselves pushing us where we do not want to go, that fear is different. It spreads through the whole body. It tightens the chest and shortens the breath. It makes the mind race in circles, searching for solutions, finding none. Most of us know this fear. We have felt it during times when life seemed to spin beyond our control. An illness we did not expect. A loss that came without warning. A change in circumstances that upended everything we thought we knew. In these moments, it can feel like we are those travelers in the boat, waves crashing around us, the shore impossibly far away. The natural response is to fight, to grip the oars tighter, to bail faster, to shout orders and make plans and try to force the situation back under control. But the old stories suggest another possibility. Let us return to the boat. The travelers were experienced on the water. They knew what to do when weather turned. They worked together, each one taking up a task, trying to keep the vessel steady. But the storm was stronger than their efforts. The waves grew higher. Water sloshed over the sides faster than they could bail it out. Their arms grew tired. Their voices grew hoarse. And still the storm continued. One of the travelers noticed something strange. At the back of the boat, barely visible through the spray and chaos, a figure sat completely still. While everyone else scrambled and shouted, this person simply sat. Eyes open but calm, body relaxed. breathing slow and steady. "How can you just sit there?" The traveler shouted over the wind. "Do you not see what is happening? Do you not care that we might go under?" The still figure looked up. There was no fear in those eyes, no urgency, only a vast and gentle presence, like the sky itself looking back. "I see the storm," the figure said. "I feel the boat rocking, but I have not let the storm inside." "What do you mean?" "The storm is everywhere. The storm is outside. The waves are outside. The wind is outside. But look within yourself. What do you find there?" The traveler paused. It was a strange moment to turn inward, with chaos all around. But something in the still figure's voice invited him to try. He noticed his heart pounding, his breath ragged and short, his thoughts spinning like the clouds above, his whole body clenched against the danger. "I find fear," he admitted. "I find panic. I find a storm inside that feels as wild as the one outside." "Yes," the still figure said. "You have let the outer storm become an inner storm. The waves outside have become waves inside. And now you are drowning in two oceans instead of one." This is something we do so easily, without even noticing. The world presents us with difficulty, and we absorb it. We take it in. We let it set up residence in our minds and bodies, where it churns and grows and causes suffering far beyond what the original difficulty required. Someone speaks harsh words to us, and we carry those words for days, replaying them, feeling the sting again and again. A situation does not go as we hoped, and we spin stories about what it means, about what will happen next, about how everything is falling apart. We read news of troubles in distant places, and we feel those troubles as if they were happening in our own living room. We become sponges for the world's chaos. We soak it up and hold it, and then we wonder why we feel so heavy, so anxious, so unable to rest. A teacher once compared this to a clear pool of water. When the water is still, it reflects the sky perfectly. You can see the clouds, the birds, the blue expanse above. But throw a handful of mud into the pool, and everything clouds over. The reflection is lost. The clarity is gone. Our minds are like that pool. When they are still, they reflect reality clearly. But when we throw the mud of worry, the mud of fear, the mud of endless reaction into the pool, we lose our clarity. We no longer see things as they are. We see only the murk of our own inner storm. The Buddha noticed this tendency in the human heart. He saw how we create inner worlds that mirror and magnify our outer circumstances. He saw how a small difficulty can become a large suffering when we add to it with our thoughts and reactions. But he also saw that this process can work in the other direction. Just as a disturbed mind magnifies the storms outside, a peaceful mind can calm them. Not by controlling the weather or stopping the waves, but by refusing to let the chaos inside. By maintaining a still center that the outer circumstances cannot touch. This is what the figure in the boat had learned. Not how to stop storms, but how to remain unstormed. But how? The traveler asked. How do you stay so calm when everything is falling apart? The still figure smiled gently. Everything is not falling apart. The boat is rocking. The waves are high. These things are true. But notice how your mind has added to these simple facts. Your mind has decided that this means disaster, that this means death, that this means everything is lost. These are stories, not reality. But we could sink. Yes, we could. And we could also reach the shore safely. Both are possible. But right now, in this moment, neither has happened. Right now, there is only the boat, the water, the wind, and us. Why add suffering about a future that may never come? The traveler wanted to argue, but something in the words caught him. He realized that much of his panic was indeed about what might happen, not about what was actually happening right now. The present moment, the still figure continued, is always manageable. It is only when we pile the past and future onto it that it becomes too heavy to bear. Right now, in this exact instant, you are alive. You are breathing. You are here. Can you rest in that? But the waves are also here. They are part of this moment. Can they be here without your resistance? Can you let them be waves without needing them to be something else? The traveler took a breath, then another. He tried to feel the rocking of the boat without fighting it. He tried to hear the wind without calling it enemy. He tried to be here, just here, without the weight of all his fears about what might come next. Something shifted. The storm did not stop. The waves did not gentle, but something in him settled. A small space opened up between the outer chaos and his inner response. And in that space, he found he could breathe. There is an old teaching about a tree in a strong wind. A rigid tree, one that refuses to bend, will eventually break. Its very strength becomes its weakness. When the wind pushes, it pushes back, and the force builds until something gives. We have all seen such trees after a great storm, snapped at the trunk, their resistance finally overcome. But a flexible tree moves with the wind. It bends and sways and dances. It does not fight the force that pushes against it. And when the wind passes, it straightens again, unbroken, perhaps even stronger for having learned to yield. Watch a willow in a storm sometime. Its long branches whip and fly, touching the ground, sweeping through the air. It looks wild, chaotic, out of control. But the willow survives storms that topple oaks. Its flexibility is not weakness. It is wisdom. We can be like the rigid tree, meeting every difficulty with resistance, fighting every storm with all our strength. This feels brave. It feels strong, but over time, it exhausts us. It wears us down, and sometimes it breaks us. Or we can be like the flexible tree, learning to bend without breaking, to move with difficulty instead of against it, to find the still point at our center that remains steady even when our branches sway. This does not mean we become passive. The travelers in the boat still work to keep their vessel afloat. The flexible tree still stands tall when the wind is calm. There is a time for effort, for action, for doing what needs to be done. But beneath the effort, beneath the action, there can be a quietness, a place that is not touched by the outer circumstances, a center that holds, no matter what swirls around it. The storm lasted through the afternoon. The travelers kept working, but something had changed. The panic that had gripped them earlier had loosened its hold. They still bailed water and adjusted the sails and did all the practical things that needed doing. But they did these things from a different place inside themselves. There was less shouting now, less frantic energy, more steady, focused effort, more trust that they would handle whatever came. and the figure at the back of the boat continued to sit in stillness, a reminder that peace was possible even here, even now, even in the middle of the storm. As evening approached, the wind began to ease. The waves grew smaller. The clouds parted, and a few stars appeared in the darkening sky. The travelers realized they were going to make it. The far shore was closer now, visible in the fading light. One of them turned to the still figure. "I thought we were going to sink," she said. "I was so sure of it. But here we are." "Here we are," the figure agreed. "I spent most of the day terrified. But you never seemed afraid at all. Were you not worried?" The figure considered the question. "I felt the wind. I felt the rocking. I knew the danger was real. But I have learned that adding fear to danger does not make us safer. It only makes us suffer twice, once from the danger itself, and once from our fear of it. But fear is natural. How can we not feel it? Fear arises. That is true. It is natural, as you say. But we do not have to become the fear. We can feel it as a sensation in the body, a tightness, a quickness of breath. We can notice the thoughts it brings, and then we can let it pass through us without taking up permanent residence. The woman was quiet for a moment, watching the stars multiply as the sky darkened. "It sounds so simple when you say it." It is simple, but simple is not easy. It takes practice to find the still center. It takes patience to return to it again and again when we are pulled away. But it is always there, waiting for us. No storm can destroy it. No wave can wash it away. It is the part of us that is deeper than any difficulty, vaster than any fear. We all carry this still center within us. It is not something we need to create or achieve. It is not a reward for years of practice or a gift given only to a fortunate few. It is our birthright. It is what we are beneath all the layers of reaction and habit and fear. When life is calm, this center is easy to access. We feel it in quiet moments, in peaceful surroundings, when nothing demands our attention or stirs up our fears. We taste it sometimes just before sleep, or in the early morning before the day has gathered its momentum, or in nature when the beauty of the world quiets our busy minds. But the real gift of the still center is that it remains even when life is not calm. It remains in the storm, in the chaos, in the moments when everything seems to be falling apart. It is the eye of the hurricane, the depth beneath the waves, the sky behind the clouds. We cannot always control what happens outside us. Storms will come. Difficulties will arise. The boat will rock, sometimes gently, sometimes wildly. This is the nature of a life. No one is exempt. No one gets a pass. But we can learn to return, again and again, to the place inside that the storms cannot reach. We can learn to act from stillness rather than from panic. We can learn to meet whatever comes with a presence that is not shattered by outer circumstances. This is not about suppressing our feelings or pretending we are not afraid. The fear can be there. The sadness can be there. The uncertainty can be there. But we discover that there is a part of us that is larger than our feelings, deeper than our fears. A part that can hold it all without being overwhelmed. A part that remains whole even when everything else seems to be breaking. The travelers reached the far shore as night settled over the water. They pulled the boat onto the sand and stood for a moment, looking back at the lake that had nearly swallowed them. It was calm now. The surface reflected the stars. It was hard to believe, looking at that peaceful water, that just hours ago it had been so wild. But they had learned something that day that they would not forget. The storm had been real. The danger had been real. But the deepest peace was not found by escaping the storm. It was found by discovering what remains steady within us, no matter what rages without. Let your body settle now. Let your breath deepen. And when you are ready, we will continue together. Here is a question worth sitting with. Do we truly want peace? Or do we only think we do? It sounds strange to ask. Of course we want peace. We long for it. We seek it in quiet places and gentle practices. We dream of a mind that does not race, a heart that does not ache, a life that flows without so much struggle. And yet, watch yourself closely for a single day. Notice how often you reach for stimulation, how easily boredom arises when things grow quiet, how the mind, given nothing to chew on, will manufacture problems just to have something to do. There is a part of us that loves the drama, that feeds on the worry, that would feel strangely empty without something to fix or fight or figure out. A teacher once said that what most people truly want is endless excitement and perfect peace, both at the same time. We want the thrill without the anxiety, the passion without the pain, the aliveness of struggle without actually having to struggle. But life does not work this way. And perhaps, more importantly, we do not work this way. We are more complicated than our simple wish for peace. We are divided creatures, wanting rest and restlessness in equal measure, often in the same breath. Understanding this is not a problem to solve. It is simply something to see clearly. And in seeing it clearly, something begins to shift. There is an old confession that has been passed down through the centuries. A man who would later become a great teacher was struggling in his younger years with desire. He wanted to live a pure life, a devoted life, a life of peace and simplicity. But he also wanted the pleasures he had always known. He wanted the comforts, the excitements, the familiar satisfactions of his old ways. In his private writings, he made a confession that has echoed through the ages. "Grant me purity," he wrote, "but not yet. Not yet." Those two words contain a universe of human truth. We want to change, but not yet. We want to let go, but not yet. We want peace, but first we want to finish worrying about this one thing, solving this one problem, achieving this one goal. Then we will rest. Then we will be at peace. But that moment never comes. There is always one more thing, one more worry, one more problem, one more reason to postpone the peace we claim to want. Perhaps the honest prayer would be, "Grant me peace, but let me keep my familiar struggles. Grant me stillness, but let me hold on to my beloved agitations. Grant me freedom, but not so much that I have to actually change." Why do we cling to what disturbs us? The Buddha had a word for this: attachment. But attachment does not only mean clinging to pleasant things. We can be just as attached to our suffering as to our pleasures. We can grip our pain as tightly as we grip our joys. Part of it is simply habit. We have lived with our worries for so long that they feel like old friends. Uncomfortable friends, perhaps. Friends who keep us up at night and make our shoulders tight. But friends nonetheless. Familiar. known, ours. There is a strange comfort in the familiar, even when the familiar is painful. At least we know what to expect. At least we know how to navigate it. Peace, by contrast, can feel like foreign territory. We do not know who we would be without our struggles. We do not know how to fill the space that would open up if we actually let them go. A woman once came to a teacher with a problem she had carried for many years. It was a grievance against someone who had wronged her long ago. She had told the story countless times. She had nursed the hurt, kept it alive, let it shape her days and her dreams. The grievance had become like a companion. When she woke in the morning, it was there. When she lay down at night, it whispered to her. In quiet moments throughout the day, she would find herself returning to it, turning it over, feeling again the sting of what had happened. "I want to be free of this," she said to the teacher. "I want to let it go, but I do not know how. I have tried so many times. I have told myself to move on. I have reasoned with myself, reminded myself that holding on to this only hurts me. But still it remains." The teacher listened with great attention. He did not interrupt. He did not offer quick advice. He simply received her words the way a lake receives rain. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he asked a simple question. "Are you sure you want to let it go?" The woman was taken aback. "Of course I am sure. It causes me so much pain. Why would I want to keep it?" "That is a good question," the teacher said. "Why would you? And yet you have kept it all these years. Perhaps there is a reason." "What do you mean?" "I mean that part of you must want to hold on to this grievance. Otherwise, you would have released it long ago. The mind does not cling to things that offer nothing. So what does this grievance offer you?" The woman wanted to protest, to insist that it offered her nothing but suffering. But something in the teacher's gentle gaze invited her to look more honestly. "It gives you an identity," the teacher continued softly. "A story to tell. A reason for why your life has been difficult. It gives you someone to blame, somewhere to put your pain. If you let it go, who would you be? What story would you tell then?" The woman was quiet for a long time. She had never considered this. She had always assumed she wanted to be free of her grievance. But now she saw that part of her had been holding on tightly, even as another part longed to release it. "I do not know who I would be," she admitted finally. Her voice was small, surprised by its own honesty. "No," the teacher said gently. "You do not. And that is frightening. The familiar pain feels safer than the unknown peace. But I wonder if you might be willing to find out. I wonder if you might be willing to step into that not knowing and see what is waiting there." This is the territory where real change begins. Not in the easy moments when we are sure of what we want, but in the honest moments when we admit that we are divided. When we see that part of us reaches toward peace while another part clings to struggle. When we acknowledge that letting go is not just a matter of wanting to, but of being willing to become someone we do not yet know. The Buddha spoke of this when he taught about craving. He saw how the mind reaches endlessly for what it does not have and pushes away what it does not want. This reaching and pushing is so constant, so automatic, that we hardly notice it. It is simply how we move through the world. But in that constant motion, there is no rest. There is no peace. We are always leaning toward the next moment, the next thing, the next satisfaction. We are never simply here at ease with what is. To find peace, we must be willing to stop reaching, to stop pushing, to let this moment be enough, even if it is not what we hoped for, even if it is not what we planned. This sounds simple, but it asks everything of us. It asks us to give up our favorite distractions, our cherished complaints, our comfortable identities as people who are seeking something, working towards something, struggling against something. It asks us to simply be. Let us explore another story. A young man came to study with a teacher known for his wisdom and his kindness. The young man was earnest and eager. He wanted to learn everything, to progress quickly, to become peaceful and wise as fast as possible. He had read about the great masters who could sit for hours in perfect stillness. He had heard stories of practitioners whose minds had become like clear mountain lakes, undisturbed by any wind. He wanted this for himself, and he wanted it soon. He practiced diligently. He sat for long hours, even when his legs ached and his back grew tired. He read every book he could find. He asked question after question, always seeking the next insight, the next breakthrough, the next level of understanding. But the peace he sought remained elusive. The harder he tried, the more it seemed to slip away. His mind, rather than growing quiet, seemed to grow louder. It commented on his practice. It judged his progress. It compared him to the masters he had read about and found him lacking. One day, the teacher found him sitting alone by a stream, looking discouraged. The water flowed past, sparkling in the afternoon light, but the young man did not seem to notice its beauty. "What troubles you?" the teacher asked, settling onto a rock nearby. "I have been practicing for months," the young man said, "but I do not feel any more peaceful than when I began. If anything, I feel more agitated. I try so hard, but nothing seems to work. What am I doing wrong?" The teacher watched the water for a moment before responding. "Tell me," he said, "when you sit to practice, what are you hoping for?" "Peace," the young man said immediately. "Stillness. A quiet mind. And when peace does not come, what do you do?" "I try harder. I concentrate more. I tell myself I must be doing something wrong, and I adjust my approach." "I see," the teacher said. "So you are seeking peace?" "Yes, of course. And do you think peace can be caught? Like a fish in a net? Like a bird in a cage?" The young man hesitated. "I do not know. I thought if I practiced correctly, peace would come." "Peace is not something that comes," the teacher said. "It is something that remains when we stop chasing it. It is what is here when we finally stop running, stop reaching, stop trying so hard to be somewhere other than where we are." "But how do I stop trying? Is that not just another kind of trying?" The teacher laughed warmly. "Now you are beginning to see the puzzle. Yes, trying to stop trying is still trying. Seeking to end seeking is still seeking. The mind ties itself in knots this way. Then what is the answer? The answer is not in the mind. The mind will never figure this out. The answer is in the giving up. In the moment when you are so tired of chasing that you simply stop. Not because you have succeeded, but because you have finally admitted that chasing does not work. The young man sat with this. He could feel the part of him that wanted to turn even this into a technique. Even giving up could become something to do, something to achieve. "I think I see what you mean," he said slowly. But I am not sure I am ready to give up. No, the teacher agreed. Perhaps not yet. And that is honest. That is a good place to start. Better to admit you are not ready than to pretend you are. The pretending is just another way of chasing. There is a Zen teaching that says, sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes and the grass grows by itself. We cannot force the grass to grow. We cannot hurry the spring. But we can stop trampling the garden with our endless efforts. We can get out of the way and let what wants to happen, happen. There is great kindness in being honest with ourselves. We do not need to pretend we are further along than we are. We do not need to act as if we want peace when part of us still clings to struggle. We do not need to force a surrender that has not yet ripened in us. This honesty is not harsh or critical. It is not the voice that tells us we are failing or falling short. It is something gentler than that. It is simply seeing what is true, the way we might notice the weather outside our window. It is raining. It is sunny. It is cloudy. No judgment, just noticing. And when we turn this gentle noticing toward ourselves, we might see, part of me wants peace. Part of me is afraid of peace. Part of me clings to the familiar struggle because at least I know how to do that. Part of me is not ready to let go. All of this can be held with kindness. All of this can be seen without shame. What we can do is see ourselves clearly. Notice the divided heart. Acknowledge the part that reaches and the part that rests. Hold both with gentleness, without judgment, without demanding that we be different than we are. This seeing, this honest witnessing of ourselves, is itself a form of peace. Not the peace of having arrived, but the peace of no longer pretending. The peace of truth. And something mysterious happens when we stop pretending. When we admit that we are not ready to let go, we often find that we have already begun letting go. The admission itself loosens the grip. The honesty creates space. It is as if the heart, finally allowed to be what it is, can relax and open in ways it could not when we were demanding it be something else. We cannot force ourselves to want peace. We cannot will ourselves into surrender. But we can tell the truth about where we are. We can stop adding the burden of pretense to the burden of struggle. And in that lightning, something opens. A door we did not know was there. A possibility we could not have planned. Perhaps you recognize something of yourself in these words. Perhaps you have noticed the part of you that says it wants rest, while another part keeps stirring things up. Perhaps you have seen how you reach for peace with one hand, while holding on to your worries with the other. Perhaps you have caught yourself chasing stillness with the same energy you chase everything else, turning even rest into another item on the to-do list. This is not a failure. This is not something to be ashamed of. This is simply being human. We are complex creatures, woven of contradictions, capable of wanting opposite things in the same moment. We can long for quiet while dreading the silence. We can yearn for simplicity while clinging to our complications. The Buddha called this the nature of the untrained mind. It pulls in many directions at once. It wants what it does not have and fears what it does. This is not a personal flaw. It is the shared condition of all beings who have not yet woken up to what they truly are. The invitation is not to fix this or to overcome it. The invitation is simply to see it, to know yourself as you actually are, not as you think you should be. To meet your divided heart with compassion rather than criticism. There is a tenderness in this seeing, a softening When we stop demanding that we be pure in our wanting, we can finally relax. We can let ourselves be the complicated, contradictory beings that we are. We can stop the exhausting effort of trying to be something we are not. And strangely, paradoxically, this acceptance is itself a doorway to peace. Not the peace we imagined, the perfect peace of wanting nothing and struggling with nothing, but a gentler peace, a more human peace, the peace of someone who has stopped fighting with themselves. The ancient Zen masters understood this well. They did not teach their students to become perfect. They taught them to become real, to stop pretending, to meet themselves honestly with all their contradictions and confusions, and to discover that even the mess of being human, could be held in awareness without struggle. The woman with the grievance, the young man chasing stillness, the ancient confessor asking for purity but not yet. They are all the same. They are all us. And the path forward is not through force or effort or getting it right. The path forward is through honesty, through tenderness, through the willingness to be exactly where we are, wanting exactly what we want, divided in exactly the ways we are divided. From there, something can grow, something we cannot manufacture or control, something that arrives only when we have stopped trying to make it arrive. Peace comes to those who have given up chasing it, not because they succeeded in their chase, but because they finally, honestly, completely stopped. Let that settle for a moment. Let your breath be easy. And when you are ready, we will continue together. There is a story that has been told for centuries in tea houses and gathering places across many lands. A man known for his wild tales was holding court one afternoon, surrounded by friends who had learned to take his adventures with a grain of salt. But they loved him anyway, and they loved his stories, so they gathered close to hear his latest. "You will not believe what happened to me last week," he announced, his eyes bright with mischief. "I was traveling through the hill country when I encountered a band of fierce warriors. Dozens of them, armed with swords and spears, dangerous men with murder in their eyes." His friends leaned in. "What did you do?" one of them asked. "I caused them all to run," the man said proudly. "Every single one of them. They fled before me like leaves before the wind." "Incredible. How did you manage such a thing?" The man grinned. "It was simple, really. I ran, and they ran after me." The tea house erupted in laughter. The storyteller had tricked them again, turning his cowardice into a boast. But beneath the humor lies a teaching that has kept this little tale alive for so many generations. We laugh because we recognize ourselves. How often have we tried to outrun what troubles us? How many times have we believed that if we could just get away, just find a different situation, just escape to somewhere new, then finally our problems would be solved? But the warriors always follow. The difficulties always catch up. Because the thing we are truly running from is not out there in the world. It is in here, in the mind we carry with us wherever we go. The Buddha saw this clearly in his own time. People would come to him exhausted from running. They had tried everything. They had changed their homes, their work, their relationships. They had sought wealth, and they had renounced it. They had pursued pleasure, and they had fled from it. And still, the same restlessness followed them. "It is like trying to escape your own shadow," the Buddha observed. "The faster you run, the faster it keeps pace. You cannot outrun what is attached to you. This is not to say that we should never change our circumstances. Sometimes a situation is genuinely harmful, and leaving is the wisest choice. Sometimes a new environment offers room to breathe, space to heal, fresh possibilities we could not have found in the old place. But if we believe that the change itself will bring us peace, we are setting ourselves up for disappointment. The new place will have its own challenges. The new situation will present its own difficulties. And the mind we bring with us, with all its old habits and familiar worries, will continue doing what it has always done. Peace is not a place we can travel to. It is a way of being wherever we already are. There is a story about a seeker who left ordinary life behind to find peace in a remote monastery. The monastery was everything he had hoped for. Nestled high in the mountains, far from any town, surrounded by nothing but rock and sky and silence. The monks who lived there had given up the distractions of the world. They rose before dawn, spent their days in meditation and simple work, and retired early to their small rooms. Surely here, the seeker thought, he would find the stillness that had eluded him. For the first few days, he felt a kind of relief. No noise, no demands, no complications, just the rhythm of the bells and the quiet shuffle of feet on stone floors. But by the second week, something had shifted. The silence that had seemed so welcoming began to feel heavy. The simple food grew monotonous. The daily routine, which had seemed so peaceful at first, now felt like a prison of repetition. And worst of all, his mind, which he had expected to grow calm in these tranquil surroundings, had grown louder than ever. All the thoughts he had been running from were still there. The worries, the regrets, the fears, the endless commentary. They had followed him up the mountain, and now, without the distractions of ordinary life to drown them out, they seemed to shout even louder. He sought out one of the elder monks. "I do not understand," he said. "I came here to escape my troubled mind, but my mind is more troubled than ever. What is wrong with this place?" The old monk had kind eyes and a face that had seen many seekers come and go. "There is nothing wrong with this place," he said gently. "These are just mountains. That is just sky. The trouble you feel is not in the rocks or the silence. It is in you. You brought it with you, the same way you brought your body and your breath. Then what was the point of coming here? I thought if I could just get away." Yes, many think this. They believe peace lives in a particular place, and if they can only get there, they will be free. But peace does not live in places. Peace lives in how we meet whatever place we find ourselves in. The seeker sat with this, feeling the weight of it. "So I cannot escape." You cannot escape yourself. That is true. But this is not a prison sentence. This is actually good news. How can it be good news? Because it means you do not have to go anywhere. You do not have to find the perfect monastery or the perfect teacher or the perfect circumstances. Everything you need is already with you. The peace you seek is not waiting at the top of some distant mountain. It is here, now, beneath all your running. You have only to stop long enough to discover it. The seeker looked out the window at the vast sky stretching beyond the mountain peaks. "I have been running for so long," he said quietly. "I do not know if I remember how to stop." "That is honest," the old monk said. "And honesty is where all true practice begins. You do not have to know how to stop. You only have to be willing to try. To sit with what is here, even when it is uncomfortable. To stay, even when every part of you wants to flee. What if I cannot bear it? What if the thoughts are too loud, the feelings too heavy? Then you cannot bear it, and the thoughts are too loud, and the feelings are too heavy. And you notice this, and you stay anyway. Not forever. Just for this breath. Just for this moment. And then the next. That is all any of us can do. The seeker sat with this for a long while. Outside, a bird called. The sound echoed off the stone walls and faded into silence. Will it get easier? He asked finally. I do not know, the monk said honestly. For some it does. For others, the difficulty remains, but they learn to hold it differently. What I can tell you is this: the running never leads anywhere. I have watched many seekers come through these gates, and the ones who find peace are not the ones who finally discover the right place. They are the ones who stop looking for a right place and learn to be at home wherever they are. There is a teaching about the lotus flower that has been passed down through generations of Buddhist practitioners. The lotus grows in muddy water. Its roots sink deep into the muck at the bottom of the pond, into the dark and the decay. This is not a mistake. This is not a problem to be solved. The mud is where the lotus finds its nourishment. The mud is what allows it to grow. And yet the flower itself rises above the water, pure and beautiful, untouched by the muck from which it came. Its petals open to the sun, white or pink or golden, holding no trace of the darkness below. If you did not know better, you might think the lotus had come from some pristine source. You might imagine it had been grown in crystal clear water, in perfect conditions, far from any contamination. But no, it came from the mud. It needed the mud. Without the mud, there would be no flower. This is the image that the Buddha offered when people asked him about finding peace in a troubled world. You do not have to escape the mud, he taught. You do not have to find a pond without muck, a life without difficulty, a world without confusion. The lotus does not go looking for cleaner water. It blooms exactly where it is planted. And so can we. The difficulties of our lives are not obstacles to peace. They are the very ground in which peace can grow. The worries, the fears, the complications we so desperately want to escape, these are the mud that nourishes something beautiful in us, if we let it. This does not mean we should seek out suffering or pretend that difficulty is pleasant. The lotus does not love the mud. It simply grows through it. It uses what is there. It transforms the dark into something luminous. We too have this capacity. We too can grow through our difficulties rather than being defeated by them. We too can use what is here, whatever it is, as the ground for something beautiful to emerge. A woman once came to a teacher, exhausted from years of searching. She had traveled to distant lands. She had studied with famous masters. She had tried every practice, every technique, every path she could find. And still, the peace she sought remained just out of reach. I have done everything, she said. I have gone everywhere. Why can I not find what I am looking for? The teacher looked at her with great compassion. Where have you not looked? He asked. I have looked everywhere. I just told you. Have you looked here? He pointed at the ground beneath her feet. Have you looked now? He gestured at the present moment. Have you looked in the ordinary, the everyday, the unremarkable circumstances of your actual life. The woman was quiet. She had always assumed that peace was somewhere else, in a sacred place, in a special experience, in some future moment when she had finally figured things out. I was waiting, she admitted, waiting until I found the right teaching, the right teacher, the right conditions. I thought peace was something I would arrive at. And meanwhile, you have been missing it, the teacher said gently. Peace is not a destination. It is not waiting for you somewhere else. It is here, in this moment, in this room, in this conversation. It is here when you wash the dishes and fold the laundry and walk to the market. It is in the ordinary moments you have been rushing through on your way to somewhere more important. The woman felt something shift in her. All those years of seeking, and what she had been looking for, was hidden in plain sight. Not in the extraordinary, but in the ordinary. Not far away, but close at hand. Not in the future, but now. I have been looking right past it, she said. We all do. It is the great joke of the spiritual search. We travel the world looking for what we already have. We climb mountains seeking what is already at sea level. We complicate what is utterly simple. But if it is so simple, why did I not see it? Because you were looking for something complicated. You expected peace to announce itself with trumpets and fanfare. You expected it to feel different from ordinary life. But peace is not different from ordinary life. Peace is ordinary life, met with presence. Peace is washing the dishes while actually washing the dishes. Peace is walking while actually walking. Peace is being where you are instead of wishing you were somewhere else. The woman laughed softly. After all those years, all those journeys, all that seeking, the answer was so simple it almost hurt. I feel foolish, she said. Do not, the teacher replied. The journey was necessary. You needed to go everywhere before you could understand that nowhere special was required. You needed to try everything before you could discover that nothing extra was needed. The searching brought you here, to this moment, where you can finally stop. The Zen masters often taught through surprise. A student would come with elaborate questions about the nature of enlightenment, expecting equally elaborate answers. Instead, the master might pour a cup of tea, or point at a flower, or simply sit in silence. What are you looking for? The gesture seemed to say. It is right here. It has always been right here. One famous teacher was asked, what is the path to liberation? He answered, the cypress tree in the garden. The student was confused. What did a tree have to do with liberation? But that was precisely the point. Liberation is not somewhere else. It is not a special state achieved through special means. It is in the cypress tree. It is in the garden. It is in the ordinary, unexceptional world that we overlook every day in our search for something more. The Buddha himself, after years of extreme practices and asceticism, found enlightenment sitting quietly under a tree. Not in a temple, not through supernatural powers, not by escaping the world, just sitting, just being present, just stopping the endless search and allowing what was always there to reveal itself. Perhaps you too have been searching. Perhaps you have believed that peace is somewhere you have not yet been, something you have not yet achieved, a state you will reach when you have worked hard enough, or learned enough, or become enough. And perhaps, like the woman who had traveled everywhere, you have been looking right past what you were seeking. Peace is not elsewhere. It is here, in this breath, in this body, in this moment that asks nothing of you but your presence. The monastery is not more peaceful than your living room. The mountain is not more sacred than your kitchen. The future holds no peace that is not already available now. This is the teaching hidden in the story of the man who made the warriors run. He thought escape was possible. He thought he could leave his troubles behind. But everywhere he went, there he was. And everywhere you go, there you are too. The good news is that you do not have to go anywhere. You do not have to find a better place or a better time. You can stop running right now. You can turn around and face what you have been fleeing. You can discover that it was never as fearsome as you imagined. And in that stopping, in that turning, in that willingness to be here instead of somewhere else, you may find what you were looking for all along. Not because you finally arrived at the right destination, but because you stopped leaving, because you allowed yourself to land, to settle, to be planted in the soil of this very life, this very moment, and to discover that even here, even now, even in the midst of all your imperfect circumstances, something beautiful can grow, like the lotus in the mud, like peace in an ordinary life. Let yourself settle here for a moment. Let your breath come and go easily. And when you are ready, we will continue together. There is a figure in the old stories who fascinates me. He was not a monk. He did not live in a monastery or retreat from the world. He had a large family, a busy household, a life filled with all the complications that come with being fully engaged in the human realm. And yet he was considered one of the wisest beings of his time. When the great monks came to visit him, they were often nervous. His understanding was so deep, his presence so clear, that even the most learned teachers felt like beginners in his company. What made him remarkable was not that he had escaped ordinary life to find peace. It was that he had found peace without escaping anything at all. He worked. He raised children. He tended to the endless needs of a household. He engaged with the marketplace and the community and all the tangled relationships of daily existence. And in each of these places, he was free. This is a different kind of teaching than we usually hear. We often imagine that spiritual freedom requires special conditions. A quiet room, an empty schedule, a life stripped down to essentials. We think of peace as something fragile that can only survive in protected environments, like a delicate flower that wilts at the first sign of difficulty. But this figure from the old stories suggests something else entirely. He suggests that freedom is not fragile at all, that it can be carried anywhere, that it can enter the noisiest room, the busiest day, the most complicated situation, and remain undisturbed. Not because the noise stops, but because the one who carries this freedom has stopped fighting with the noise. There is a tension that many of us carry between our ideals and our actual lives. We have images of how a peaceful person should live. Perhaps they wake early to meditate in a sunlit room. Perhaps they eat simply and speak softly and move through their days with graceful calm. Perhaps their home is uncluttered, their relationships harmonious, their schedule spacious enough for long walks and quiet contemplation. Perhaps they never raise their voice, never feel impatient, never get caught in the small frustrations that seem to fill our days. And then we look at our own lives, the alarm that jolts us awake, the breakfast eaten standing up, The emails and obligations and small frustrations that pile up before noon. The relationships that are messy and complicated. The house that never quite stays clean. The moments when we snap at someone we love, when we feel overwhelmed, when we wonder if we are doing any of this right. There is a gap between the ideal and the real. And in that gap, we suffer. We tell ourselves that we will find peace when life settles down, when the children are older, when the project is finished, when we have paid off the debt, resolved the conflict, reached the goal we have been striving toward. We place peace on the other side of some imaginary line and spend our days trying to cross it. But the line keeps moving. Life does not settle down. There is always another demand, another complication, another reason why now is not the right time. The peaceful future we imagine remains always in the future, always just out of reach. A Zen teacher once said something that stopped me cold. He said, "Peace and ideals are opposites." At first, this seems wrong. Surely our ideals of peace are what guide us toward peace. Surely imagining a better life is the first step toward creating one. But look more closely. When we hold an ideal of how life should be, we are in constant conflict with how life actually is. The ideal becomes a measuring stick that our real life can never match. Every moment that falls short of the ideal becomes a source of dissatisfaction. Every imperfection becomes evidence that we have not yet arrived. The ideal, meant to inspire us, instead becomes a weapon we use against ourselves. What if we dropped the ideal entirely? What if we stopped waiting for conditions to improve and instead brought our full presence to conditions as they are? This is what the figure in the old stories had discovered. He was not waiting for a better life. He was not comparing his busy household to some imagined monastery. He was simply here, in the life he had, offering his presence fully to whatever was in front of him. And in that offering, he found freedom. Let us explore what this might look like in an ordinary day. You wake in the morning. Perhaps you slept well, perhaps not. Perhaps the day ahead is inviting, perhaps it is filled with things you would rather avoid. Either way, here you are. This is the day you have been given. There is a choice in this moment, though we rarely notice it. You can wake into resistance, already bracing against the hours ahead, already wishing things were different. Or you can wake into acceptance, meeting the day as it is, curious about what it might hold. The circumstances are the same either way, but the experience is entirely different. You move through your morning. There are tasks to attend to, perhaps people who need you, perhaps a schedule that feels too full. Here too there is a choice. You can rush through these moments, treating them as obstacles between you and some imagined better time. Or you can enter them fully, giving your attention to what is actually here. The Buddha spoke of this as mindfulness in daily life. Not just sitting on a cushion, but waking up in the midst of ordinary activities. Washing dishes as if washing dishes were the most important thing in the world. Because in that moment, it is. It is the only thing happening. It is your entire life, condensed into soap and water and the smooth surface of a bowl. This might sound tedious. Who wants to pay attention to dishes? But there is a secret hidden here. When we give ourselves fully to any activity, that activity opens up. It becomes vivid, alive, interesting in ways we never noticed when we were rushing through it to get somewhere else. The water is warm. The bubbles catch the light. The bowl has a weight, a texture, a history. We are here, in a body, in a kitchen, in a life. This is not nothing. This is everything. There was a teacher who demonstrated this truth in an unusual way. Rather than retreating from the world, he went deeper into it. He took up work that most spiritual seekers would avoid. He entered places of confusion and difficulty, not to escape from them, but to bring presence into them. He was known to spend time in the marketplace, among the merchants and traders, the noise and the bargaining, and the endless exchange of goods for coins. His students found this puzzling. Why would a teacher of wisdom spend his days in such a place? Where else would I be needed? He asked. The quiet temple is already quiet. But here, in the midst of all this grasping and striving, here is where presence can make a difference. He was also known to visit those who were ill, those who were grieving, those who were caught in difficult circumstances. He did not avoid suffering. He walked toward it, bringing nothing but his attention and his care. When people asked why he did not live in a monastery like other teachers, he said something surprising. How can I teach that freedom is available everywhere if I only stay in one place? How can I show that peace survives in any condition if I only choose peaceful conditions? And so he lived among ordinary people, doing ordinary things. He showed through his example that a life of awakening did not require special circumstances. It only required the willingness to be awake wherever you found yourself. One student asked him, "Do you never wish for quiet? For solitude? For a break from all this?" The teacher considered this. Sometimes the body grows tired. Sometimes the heart needs rest. But I have learned that quiet can be found in the midst of noise, if you know how to listen. Solitude can be found in the midst of crowds, if you know how to be alone with yourself. The break I used to seek outside of life, I now find within it. His students learned more from watching him navigate daily life than they ever could have learned from formal teachings. They saw him handle conflict with grace. They saw him face difficulty without losing his center. They saw him laugh and grieve and work and rest, all with the same quality of presence. He was not performing peace. He was not pretending that hard things were easy. He was simply present, fully engaged with whatever was in front of him, not wishing he was somewhere else. This is what it means to find freedom in every realm. Not transcending the realm, but entering it so completely that there is no separation between you and your life. There is a phrase that captures this teaching beautifully. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The activities do not change. The wood still needs chopping. The water still needs carrying. Life still requires effort and attention, and all the unglamorous work of being human. What changes is how we meet these activities. Before, we might chop wood while wishing we were doing something else. We carry water with our minds miles away, planning or worrying or dreaming of a different life. After, we just chop. We just carry. The activity is no longer an obstacle to some better moment. It is the moment, complete in itself, whole. This is freedom. Not freedom from chopping and carrying, but freedom within it. A master was once asked by a student, "What is the way to liberation?" The master said, "When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep." The student was confused. But everyone does this. How is that special? The master smiled. When most people eat, they are thinking of 1,000 things. When most people sleep, they are churning with 1,000 dreams. Truly eating when you eat, truly sleeping when you sleep. This is rare. This is liberation. Perhaps you have tasted this in your own life. A moment when you were so absorbed in what you were doing that time disappeared. A conversation so engaging that you forgot yourself entirely. A walk where the beauty around you filled you so completely that there was no room left for worry. Maybe it was playing with a child, entering so fully into the game that nothing else existed. Maybe it was working with your hands, building or gardening or cooking, when the world narrowed to just this task, just these materials, just this simple movement of making. Maybe it was listening to music, and for a few minutes, you were not a person with problems and a history and a future to worry about. You were just listening, just hearing, just present. In those moments, you were not trying to be peaceful. You were not working towards some spiritual goal. You were simply present, and presence turned out to be enough. These moments come more often than we realize. We just do not always notice them because we are so busy looking for something else. We are looking for big experiences, dramatic transformations, obvious signs of progress. And meanwhile, the small moments of freedom slip past unnoticed. This is available always. Not just in special moments of beauty or connection, but in any moment we are willing to show up for. The traffic jam, the difficult meeting, the pile of laundry, the crying child, the ache in the body, the fear in the heart. None of these are obstacles to freedom. They are invitations to freedom. They are asking, can you be here for this? Can you bring your full presence to what is actually happening rather than wishing it away? The answer is always yes. We can always say yes to this moment. It may not be the moment we wanted. It may not match our ideals, but it is the moment we have. And within it, everything is available. The figure from the old stories understood something that many seekers miss. He understood that life itself is the path, not preparation for the path, not something to get through until the real spiritual work begins. The cooking and cleaning and child raising and working and loving and struggling and resting, all of it, this is the path. There is no other path. We can spend our lives waiting for conditions to improve, postponing our freedom until some imaginary future when everything is just right. Or we can begin now, in the midst of imperfect conditions, with the life we actually have. The Buddha taught that every moment is a doorway. Every activity is an opportunity. Every relationship, every challenge, every ordinary day is a chance to wake up, to be present, to discover the freedom that has been here all along. We do not need to become different people. We do not need different lives. We only need to bring a different quality of attention to the life we already have. This is the invitation of the Bodhisattva in every realm. Not to escape, but to engage. Not to transcend, but to enter fully. Not to wait for better conditions, but to bring our best presence to whatever conditions we find. And when we do this, something remarkable happens. The conditions themselves begin to shift. Not because we have forced them to change, but because our way of meeting them has changed. We bring peace into the room, and the room feels more peaceful. We bring presence into the conversation, and the conversation deepens. We become like a lamp carried into a dark space. We do not fight the darkness. We simply shine. And by shining, we transform whatever we touch. This is perhaps the deepest teaching of all, that we are not here to escape life, but to illuminate it. That our presence, offered fully and without reservation, is itself a gift to every room we enter, every person we meet, every moment we inhabit. The old figure from the stories understood this. He did not see his busy life as an obstacle to his practice. He saw it as his practice. Every interaction was an opportunity to offer presence. Every difficulty was a chance to discover that peace could survive anything. Every ordinary moment was sacred because he brought his full attention to it. This is available to all of us. We do not need to become great teachers or wise figures. We only need to show up fully for our own lives, to stop waiting and start living, to bring our best attention to whatever is in front of us, however humble or difficult it may be. As you rest now, you might consider this. You do not have to wait. You do not have to change your circumstances or fix your life or become someone else. You can begin right now with things exactly as they are. Let yourself feel the simplicity of this, the relief of not having to get somewhere else, the kindness of being allowed to start exactly where you are. And when you are ready, we will continue together. There is a teacher who visits every life without invitation. This teacher does not knock politely or wait for a convenient time. It arrives when it arrives, often at the worst possible moment, often wearing a face we would rather not see. It speaks in a language we resist, brings lessons we did not ask for, stays longer than we would like. This teacher is disappointment. We spend so much of our lives trying to avoid this visitor. We plan carefully. We work hard. We arrange our circumstances to minimize the chances of things going wrong. And still, disappointment finds us. The relationship we thought would last does not. The work we poured ourselves into does not succeed. The body that seemed so reliable begins to falter. The world we believed in turns out to be more complicated than we imagined. These moments hurt. There is no way around that. The Buddha called this the first noble truth, the truth of suffering, and he did not mean it as a philosophy to debate. He meant it as a reality to be faced. Life includes disappointment. It includes loss. It includes the gap between what we hoped for and what actually arrives. But here is where the teaching begins. What if disappointment is not simply an obstacle to our happiness? What if it is actually a doorway? What if the very experiences we most want to avoid are the ones that have the most to teach us? A woman once shared a story about visiting a memorial. It was a simple wall stretching across a green lawn, inscribed with thousands of names. Each name represented a life, a story, a person who had been loved and was now gone. People came from all over to visit this wall. They came to find a particular name, to touch the carved letters, to remember. The woman walked slowly along the wall, reading name after name. She had not lost anyone whose name was written there. She had come simply to witness, to be present with all this remembered loss. She noticed other visitors as she walked. An elderly man standing before one section, his hand pressed flat against the stone, his lips moving in silent conversation. A young woman kneeling on the grass, leaving flowers at the base of the wall. A family standing together, arms around each other, nobody speaking. And as she walked, something shifted in her. She began to cry, not for any particular person, but for all of them, for the weight of all that love and all that loss, for the simple fact that we are here for such a short time, that we matter so much to each other, that we lose each other anyway. At the base of the wall, she noticed small objects that visitors had left behind. Letters, photographs, a child's drawing, a military medal, each one a message to someone who could no longer receive it. Each one a testament to love that had outlasted death. One letter caught her eye. It was just a few words, handwritten on a slip of paper. "I would give anything to hear your voice one more time." Such a simple sentence, such an ocean of feeling behind it. It was not a pleasant experience. It was not comfortable, but she said later that it was one of the most important moments of her life. Standing before all that grief, she felt something crack open in her heart. And through that crack, a deeper understanding entered. She understood, in a way she had not understood before, how precious this life is, how brief, how worthy of her full attention. She understood that the people she loved would not be with her forever, and that this made loving them more important, not less. This is what facing the truth of disappointment can do. It cracks us open. It strips away our comfortable illusions. And in the space that opens, something more real can grow. The Buddha did not teach that we should seek out suffering. He did not suggest that we make our lives deliberately difficult or punish ourselves in pursuit of wisdom. But he did notice something important. He noticed that the people who had faced difficulty often had a quality that those who had not faced difficulty lacked. They had depth. They had compassion. They had a kind of groundedness that came from having been tested. It is like the difference between a tree that has grown in a greenhouse and one that has weathered many storms. The greenhouse tree may look healthy, but its roots are shallow. It has never had to dig deep. The tree that has faced wind and rain and drought has roots that reach far into the earth. It has learned to hold on. It has become strong in ways that comfort could never provide. Our difficulties do this for us, if we let them. They invite us to grow roots we would never have grown otherwise. They develop capacities we did not know we had. They introduce us to parts of ourselves we might never have met in easier times. This does not make the difficulties pleasant. The storm is still a storm. The disappointment still disappoints. But there is something available in these moments that is not available in times of ease. There is an invitation to deepen. A teacher was once asked about the purpose of suffering. "I do not know if suffering has a purpose," she said. "That is a question for philosophers. But I know that suffering can be used. It can be transformed. What arrives as pain can become wisdom if we know how to meet it." "How do we meet it?" the student asked. "We meet it honestly. We do not pretend it is not there. We do not rush to cover it over with distractions or explanations. We simply let it be what it is, and we stay present with it." That sounds very hard. It is hard. It is one of the hardest things we can do. But consider the alternative. When we run from our pain, it follows us. When we deny it, it grows in the shadows. When we numb ourselves against it, we numb ourselves against everything else as well. The only way through is through. The student sat with this. She had spent much of her life avoiding pain, and she could see how that avoidance had cost her. She had missed things. She had kept herself at a distance from life, afraid of what might hurt. Is there no way to avoid suffering entirely? She asked. The teacher smiled gently. If you find one, please tell me. I have been looking for a long time. There is an old prayer that has been passed down through generations of practitioners in the mountain monasteries of the East. It is a strange prayer because it asks for things that most of us would never want. It asks for difficulties. It asks for challenges. It asks for the very experiences we spend our lives trying to avoid. Grant that I may face the truth of impermanence, the prayer says. Let me see clearly that everything changes, that nothing I love will last forever. Let this truth enter my bones. Grant that I may stop wasting my time on things that do not matter. Let me see through my endless distractions and excuses. Let me feel the weight of my own precious days slipping away. Grant that unfortunate circumstances be brought to my path, so that I may learn what I could never learn in comfort. Let difficulty be my teacher. Let disappointment be my guide. When I first encountered this prayer, I was shocked. Who would ask for such things? Who would invite difficulty into their life on purpose? But the more I sat with it, the more I understood. The prayer was not asking for suffering for its own sake. It was asking for the kind of wake-up call that suffering can provide. It was asking to be shaken out of the comfortable sleep that most of us live in. It was asking for the truth, even when the truth is hard. Because the alternative is to sleepwalk through our lives. To reach the end and realize we were never fully here. To miss the depth and beauty that only become visible when we have faced the darkness. There is a question that people who have come close to dying often report being asked. They describe leaving their bodies, moving into a great light, feeling a presence of overwhelming love. And in that presence, a question arises, not spoken in words exactly, but understood clearly. Was it worth it? The life you lived, was it worth living? This question is not a judgment. It is not an accusation. It is simply an invitation to look honestly at how we have spent our time. Did we love? Did we pay attention? Did we show up fully for the life we were given? What strikes me about this question is what it does not ask. It does not ask whether we were successful. It does not ask whether we avoided difficulty or achieved our goals or kept ourselves comfortable. It asks whether we lived in a way that mattered, whether we engaged with what was given to us, whether we met our lives with presence and care. Disappointment can help us answer this question well. Not because disappointment is pleasant, but because disappointment strips away pretense. It shows us what we actually value. It reveals whether we are living from the surface or from the depths. When something we hoped for falls apart, we discover what remains. When our plans collapse, we find out who we really are beneath our plans. When life does not cooperate with our wishes, we have a chance to choose how we will respond. This is where character is built. Not in the easy times, but in the hard ones. Not when everything goes our way, but when nothing does. A man came to a teacher after experiencing a great loss. He had lost someone he loved, and the grief was overwhelming. He could not eat. He could not sleep. He moved through his days like a ghost, going through the motions but feeling nothing real. Colors seemed faded. Food had no taste. The world that had once seemed so solid now felt thin and strange. He did not know why he had come to see the teacher. He was not looking for wisdom or advice. He simply needed to be somewhere, to sit with someone, to not be alone with the weight of what had happened. "I do not understand," he said. "Why did this happen? What is the meaning of such pain?" The teacher sat with him in silence for a long while. She did not offer explanations or comfort or advice. She did not try to make him feel better or help him see the bright side. She simply sat, present with his suffering, not trying to fix it or take it away. This was itself a teaching. The willingness to be with pain without rushing to resolve it. The patience to let grief be grief, without needing to transform it into something more palatable. Finally, she spoke. I do not know why this happened. I cannot explain it. The universe does not offer explanations for its cruelties, no matter how much we wish it would. But I can tell you what I have learned from my own losses. What have you learned? That the heart can break and still continue to love. That grief is not a sign of weakness, but of having truly cared. That the pain you feel right now is the price of the love you shared, and most people would say that love is worth any price. The man wept. He had been trying to hold himself together, to make sense of his loss, to find some reason that would make it bearable. But now he simply let himself feel what he felt. The tears came, and he did not stop them. The grief will not go away, the teacher continued. Not entirely. It will become part of you, woven into who you are. But it will also soften over time. It will become less sharp, more like a dull ache than a stabbing pain. And you will find that you can carry it, that you are stronger than you knew. How do you know? Because I have carried my own grief. Because everyone who has loved has also lost. And we are still here. We still love. The heart has a capacity for sorrow that is matched only by its capacity for joy. The Buddha called the first noble truth dukkha, a word that is often translated as suffering, but that means something closer to many people do. But something is lost when we protect ourselves this thoroughly. We become smaller, safer, but less alive. Or we can accept the invitation. We can let disappointment do its work on us. We can allow our hearts to break open and discover that open hearts have a capacity for love that protected hearts will never know. The Zen tradition speaks of this as the gateless gate, the gate to deeper understanding, to genuine compassion, to real peace, has no lock on it. It is always open, but we cannot pass through it while carrying our armor, our defenses, our determination to never be hurt. We have to be willing to be vulnerable. We have to be willing to feel. We have to be willing to let life touch us, even when its touch is rough. This is what the teacher called disappointment has been offering us all along. Not punishment, but invitation. Not cruelty, but curriculum. Not the end of happiness, but the beginning of something deeper than happiness. Something that can hold both joy and sorrow. Something that remains steady even when circumstances do not. As you rest now, perhaps you can hold this gently. Whatever disappointments you have faced, whatever losses you have carried, they have not been wasted. They have been shaping you, deepening you, preparing you for something you could not have become any other way. You do not have to be grateful for your suffering. You do not have to pretend it was pleasant or good, but you can recognize that you have survived it, that you are still here, that something in you is stronger and wiser than it was before. That is the gift hidden inside the difficulty. That is what the teacher called disappointment has been trying to show you all along. Rest in this knowing. Let your breath be soft. And when you are ready, we will continue together. You do not have to be good. Let those words land for a moment. Feel what they stir in you. You do not have to be good. We spend so much of our lives trying to be good, trying to be better, trying to fix our flaws, improve our habits, become the person we think we should be. We carry lists of our failures, mental catalogues of everything that is wrong with us, endless projects of self-improvement stretching into an imagined future where we will finally be acceptable. But what if we could set all that down? What if, just for this moment, we could stop trying to be anything other than what we already are? There is a poem that begins with these words, and it has touched countless hearts because it offers something rare. It offers permission. Permission to stop striving. Permission to be imperfect. Permission to belong to this world exactly as we are, without first having to earn our place. The poem says, "You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert, repenting." What a strange and beautiful image. Walking on your knees through the desert. This is what we do to ourselves, is it not? We punish ourselves for our mistakes. We drag ourselves through imaginary deserts of guilt and shame. We believe that we must suffer enough, apologize enough, improve enough before we are worthy of peace. And then the poem opens into something vast. Meanwhile, it says, meanwhile the world goes on. While we are caught in our struggles, the sun is still moving across the sky. The rain is still falling on distant prairies and deep forests. The mountains are still standing. The rivers are still running toward the sea. The world does not stop for our suffering. This could feel cold, but somehow in the poem it feels like comfort. The world is so much bigger than our problems. Life is continuing, vast and beautiful and utterly indifferent to our small dramas. There is perspective in this, a reminder that we are part of something immense, that our lives, however difficult they may feel, are just tiny threads in a tapestry so large we cannot see its edges. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Can you see them? Can you hear their calls, harsh and exciting, echoing across the sky? They fly in their ancient formations, each bird taking its turn at the front, each one supported by the wind of the other's wings. They do not stop to ask whether they are worthy of the journey. They do not wonder if they have earned their place in the formation. They do not compare themselves to the other geese and find themselves lacking. They simply fly, following something ancient and instinctual, trusting the pull that draws them home. There is something in that call that stirs us, something wild and free. It reminds us of a part of ourselves that we have forgotten, the part that knows how to migrate, how to follow the seasons, how to trust the journey even when the destination is beyond sight. The poem ends with an invitation. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. Your place in the family of things. This is what we have been seeking all along, is it not? A sense of belonging, a feeling that we are not strangers here, not accidents, not mistakes, that we are part of something woven into the fabric of existence, held by the same forces that hold the stars in their courses and the geese in their flight. The poem says that this belonging is not something we have to earn. It is not given as a reward for good behavior. It is announced to us over and over by the world itself. The call of the geese. the movement of the clouds, the changing of the seasons. All of it is saying, you belong here. You are part of this. You are home. But we do not always hear this announcement. We are too busy listening to other voices, the voices that tell us we are not enough, that we do not fit, that we must change ourselves before we can truly belong. The poem asks us to listen differently, to hear beneath the noise of our self-criticism, to notice the invitation that is always being offered in every moment by the living world around us. There is a teaching in Buddhism about what is called our original nature or Buddha nature. It says that beneath all our confusion, beneath all our mistakes and failures and struggles, there is something pure, something that has never been damaged, something that is already whole, already free, already at peace. This nature is like the sun behind clouds. The clouds may be thick and dark. They may cover the sky for days or weeks or years, but the sun is still there, unchanged, shining with the same light it has always shone. When the clouds part, we do not say the sun has been created. We say it has been revealed. Our original nature is like this. It has not been destroyed by our struggles. It has not been diminished by our mistakes. It is simply covered over, hidden by the clouds of our confusion and self-doubt. We do not have to create this nature. We do not have to achieve it through effort or earn it through suffering. It is already here, already what we most deeply are. We have only to stop covering it up. We have only to let the clouds thin, to allow the light that has always been shining to finally be seen. This is similar to what the poem is pointing toward. We do not have to become worthy. We already are worthy. We do not have to earn our place in the family of things. We already have a place. We have only to recognize it, to accept it, to stop believing the voices that tell us otherwise. This is perhaps the hardest thing of all. Not the striving, not the effort, but the letting go, the surrendering of all our projects of self-improvement, the willingness to be, just for a moment, exactly what we are. A teacher was once asked what the most difficult part of the spiritual path is. She did not say meditation. She did not say discipline or study or any of the things we might expect. Forgiveness, she said. Forgiving ourselves for being human. Forgiving ourselves for all the ways we have failed to live up to our ideals. This is the hardest work there is. We are so harsh with ourselves, so quick to judge, to criticize, to find fault. We would never speak to a friend the way we speak to ourselves in our own minds. We would never hold anyone else to the impossible standards we hold ourselves to. But what if we could extend to ourselves the same kindness we would offer a struggling child? What if we could look at our mistakes not as evidence of our unworthiness, but as the natural stumbling of a creature learning to walk? The wild geese do not judge themselves for the miles they have yet to fly. They do not berate themselves for past migrations that went poorly. They simply fly, moment by moment, wingbeat by wingbeat, trusting the journey. We too can learn to fly this way. We too can learn to move through our lives without carrying the heavy burden of self-judgment. Not because we have finally become perfect, but because we have finally accepted that perfection was never the point. As we come toward the end of our journey together, I want to offer you this. You belong here. You have always belonged here. Whatever you have done, whatever has been done to you, whatever mistakes you carry, whatever wounds you nurse, you are still part of the family of things. The world is still calling to you. The geese are still flying overhead. The invitation is still being offered in every breath, in every heartbeat, in every moment of this wild and precious life. You do not have to walk on your knees anymore. You can stand up. You can stretch your wings. You can let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. And you can rest. Finally, deeply, completely rest. Not because you have earned it. Not because you have fixed everything that is wrong with you. But because rest is your birthright. Because peace is not a reward for the worthy. Because you have been carrying so much for so long, and it is time to set it down. The Buddha taught that we suffer because we cling. We cling to ideas about who we should be. We cling to memories of who we were. We cling to hopes for who we might become. And all this clinging keeps us from the simple peace of being who we already are. Let go. Just for this moment, let go. Let yourself be held by something larger than your understanding. Let yourself belong to the family of things without needing to prove your membership. You are the sky through which clouds pass. You are the ocean that holds all waves. You are part of something so vast and so beautiful that your mind cannot comprehend it, but your heart already knows. Let yourself settle now, and when you are ready, we will close together. We have traveled far together tonight. We have floated in the middle of the ocean and discovered that not knowing where we are might be the most honest answer of all. We have stood before ancient stone faces and learned that some questions do not need answers. We have found stillness in the midst of storms and peace in the midst of ordinary life. We have seen that we do not have to escape our circumstances to be free. That freedom can be carried into any room, any situation, any moment. We have learned that the way to live does not depend on knowing what comes next, only on bringing kindness and attention to what is here. We have met the teacher, called disappointment, and discovered that even our sorrows can deepen us. And we have heard the wild geese calling, announcing what has always been true, that we belong here, that we have always belonged here, that this world is our home. These teachings are not meant to be memorized or mastered. They are simply seeds, dropped gently into the soil of your heart. Some may take root tonight. Others may bloom in their own time, days or months or years from now. Trust the process. Trust yourself. For now, let everything go. Let the words fade. Let your body rest. Let the peace that has always been within you rise to meet you. You have done enough. You are enough. You always have been. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us here at Sleepy Monk.